Welcome back. This is your Story Corner, the podcast. A safe space designed and created specifically to help you relax and unwind, to support your well-being and mental health, and listen to a good story as you drift off to sleep. Wherever you are, whoever you are welcome here. If you are new here, welcome. This new series starts again today on the 1st of July, and I'm looking forward to reading some of your favorite stories. Thank you for waiting so patiently for our return and Season 2. We will be continuing to follow the adventures of one of our favorite bears, Winnie the Pooh, some more Sherlock Holmes, and some more surprises along the way. All stories to help you smile, and for a while, just focus and relax. Thank you for waiting so patiently for our return. It's always good to have a break and do different things in life. Personally speaking, I needed to take a break to rest my vocal cords. After having a slight strain and bruising on my vocal cords, a well-needed rest was needed. But now we are back to once again come together. And thank you so much for your kindness and support of this podcast. If you are new here, you can listen to Season 1 and all our previous episodes. You can find them on our website, yourstorycorner.com, or you can listen to any one of the many podcasting platforms from Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google, or even now on our YouTube channel. You can find all the links to that on our social media pages where you can follow us for the latest. Just go to yourstorycorner.com. And as Season 2 returns, so do our live bedtime stories over on TikTok. Live every other night from 10:30 p.m. UK time, where you can choose some of the stories you would like to hear as you settle down for a good night's sleep. So before our first episode of Season 2 and a return to the 100-acre woods, a reminder why I'm such a passionate believer in bedtime stories. One's mental health is as important as one's physical health, if not even more important, in these trying times we find ourselves in. Most times your mental state controls your emotional state, and your emotional state has a direct impact on your physical appearance, countenance, sometimes as well as your disposition. It can tell or reflect on how you look and your well-being in general. This is why whenever you are worried, thinking too much, we all do it, things just seem elongated and stretched, foggy. Your mental state can even translate to your behaviors or actions. Sometimes we're not even aware of it, until we just stop and pause and take stock. Audiobooks are narration of written books that not only save you time, but also convenient to listen to while you're on the go, or maybe you're doing things around the house right now, or working, or travelling, or hopefully you're settling down for a good night's sleep. One vital role it can also play, as you might not know, has lots of strong positive effects and benefits to your mental well-being. For example, listening to a bedtime story being read to you has a strong impact and benefits on your brain cells. It's a kind of mental exercise that makes your brain stay fit and active at all times. Each time you listen to a book being read to you, it puts your brain to work, sparks up the imaginative abilities, and increases blood flow to the blood vessels of your brain, thereby supplying enough oxygen needed for your brain to maintain a healthy state, or a reboot, as it were. And it doesn't just end there. It's also good for stimulating the release of certain hormones that would give you a good, soothing, and relaxed feeling. A free antidepressant, if you will. Stories being read to you can take us through journeys, and so for your mental journey as well. Could help build a remarkable level of concentration and focus as you listen to the words and paint the pictures in your mind as they're being read to you. Your brainstem becomes trained to be very alert by listening to stories being read to you regularly, and this tends to stimulate quick reflexive responses to external stimulus around you. Your brain begins to interpret information generated by your 5 sense organs very quickly, and your rate of responsiveness to them becomes impressive. It's known that you can sometimes see an increase on your ability to process information at a faster rate. It's also good for your memory as well. Listening to stories being read is a healthy habit that'll help you boost your attention and retentive memory. The central nervous system of every human is the most important part of the body, but is also one of the most neglected. It is so important that when there's any form of serious blockages, it could lead to unforeseen things. But listening to stories being read gives you an upper hand against such things, because it trains your brain to become perfect at trapping and interpreting and relaying information. This uninterrupted flow of stimulus from the sense organs to the brain and then to the spinal cord and other parts of the body is just what your body needs to function and improve, and even allow you to sleep. It can broaden your creativity, it can lift your spirits, it can take you on imaginative journeys. But if you tie it with deep breathing, you'll find, quite effortlessly, you are at one. And maybe it will take you back to when you were a little person and the comfort of being read a bedtime story. Just some of the things and the reasons why I so passionately believe in the power of being read a bedtime story. If nothing else, I hope you enjoy, and it brings you joy. Sometimes that's just all we need. Sometimes we just need a little bear to remind us also of the things that sometimes in the doldrums and the daily routine we don't allow ourselves to think about. But now it is that time. So wherever you are right now, I hope you're comfy. I hope you're curled up and relaxed. This is the time for you now. So settle back, relax, and by the sound of the roaring fireplace, it's time for your next bedtime story. Are you sitting comfortably? Good. Remember, you are not alone. And no matter whatever is going on in your day to day, no matter what's happening around you, to you. It will pass. It's going to pass. And you are going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Just for you. Because you are important. And you matter. And you were meant to listen to some Winnie the Pooh. Close your eyes and enjoy. Winnie the Pooh by A. A. Milne. Chapter 5, in which Piglet meets a heffalump. One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." What was it doing?" asked Piglet. "Oh, just lumping along," said Christopher Robin. "I don't think it saw me." "Oh, I saw one once," said Piglet. "At least, I think I did," he said. "Only perhaps it wasn't." "Oh, so did I," said Boo, wondering what a heffalump was like. "You don't often see them," said Christopher Robin carelessly. No, not now," said Piglet. "No, not at this time of year," said Boo. Then they all talked about something else, until it was time for Boo and Piglet to go home together. At first, as they stumped along the path which edged the 100-acre wood, they didn't say much to each other. But when they came to the stream, and had helped each other across the stepping stones, and were able to walk side by side again over the heather, they began to talk in a friendly way about this and that. And Piglet said, "If you see what I mean, Boo." And Boo said, "It's just what I think myself, Piglet." And Piglet said, But on the other hand, Boo, we must remember." And Boo said, "Quite right, Piglet, although I had forgotten it for the moment." And then, just as they came to the 6 pine trees, Pooh Bear looked around to see that nobody else was listening, and said in a very solemn voice, "Piglet, I have decided something." "Oh, what have you decided, Pooh?" "I have decided to catch a heffalump." Pooh nodded his head several times as he said this, and waited for Piglet to say how. Or Pooh, you couldn't, or something helpful of that sort. But Piglet said nothing. The fact was, Piglet was wishing that he had thought about it first. "I shall do it," said Boo, after waiting a little longer, "by means of a trap. And it must be a cunning trap, so you will have to help me, Piglet." "Boo," said Piglet, feeling quite happy again now. "I will." And then he said, "How shall we do it?" And Boo said, "That's just it. How?" And then they sat down together to think it out. Boo's first idea was that they should dig a very deep pit, and then the Heffalump would come along and fall into the pit. "And why?" said Piglet. "Why what?" said Boo. "Why would he fall in?" Pooh Bear rubbed his nose with his paw and said that the Heffalump might be walking along, humming a little song and looking up at the sky, wondering if it would rain, and so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that this was a very good trap, but supposing it were raining already? Pooh Bear rubbed his nose again and said that he hadn't thought of that. And then he brightened up and said that if it were raining already, the Heffalump would be looking at the sky, wondering if it would clear up, and so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that now that this point had been explained, he thought it was a cunning trap. Pooh Bear was very proud when he heard this, and he felt that the Heffalump was as good as caught already. There was just one other thing which had to be thought about, and it was this. Where should they dig the very deep pit? Piglet said that the best place would be somewhere where a Heffalump was, just before he fell into it, only about a foot further on. "But then he would see us digging it," said Boo. "Not if he looked up at the sky." "He would suspect," said Boo, "if he happened to look down." He thought for a long time, and then added sadly, "It isn't as easy as I thought. I suppose that's why Heffalumps hardly ever get caught." "Yes, that must be it," said Piglet. They sighed and got up, and when they had taken a few gauze prickles out of themselves, they sat down again. And all the time Pooh Bear was saying to himself, "If only I could think of something." For he felt sure that a very clever brain could catch a Heffalump, if only he knew the right way to go about it. "Suppose," he said to Piglet, "you wanted to catch me. How would you do it?" "Well," said Piglet, I should do it like this. I should make a trap, and I should put a jar of honey in the trap, and you would smell it, and you would go in after it, and—" "Yes, I would go in after it," said Boo excitedly, "only very carefully, so as not to hurt myself. And I would get to the jar of honey, and I should lick around the edges first of all, pretending that there wasn't any more, and then I should walk away and think about it a little, and then I should come back and start licking the middle of the jar, and then—" "Yes, well, never mind about where you would be. There I shall catch you, Boo. Oh, now, the first thing to think of is, what do Heffalumps like? Oh, I think acorns. Shouldn't you, Pooh Bear? We'll get a lot of them. Oh, I say, wake up, Boo. Pooh Bear who'd gone into a happy dream, woke up with a start and said that honey was a much more trappy thing than acorns. Piglet didn't think so, and they were just going to argue about it when Piglet remembered that if they put acorns in the trap, he would have to find the acorns. But if they put honey, then Boo would have to give up some of his own honey. So he said, "All right, honey then," just as Boo remembered it too, and was going to say, "All right, acorns." "Honey," said Piglet to himself in a thoughtful way, as if it were now settled. "I'll dig the pit while you go and get the honey." "Very well," said Boo, and he stumped off. As soon as he got home, he went to the larder, and he stood on a chair and took down a very large jar of honey from the top shelf. It had honey written on it, but just to make sure, he took off the paper cover and looked at it, and it looked just like honey. "But you never can tell," said Boo. "I remember my uncle saying once that he had seen cheese just this colour." And so he put his tongue in and took a large lick. "Yes, it is. No doubt about that. And honey, I should say, right down to the bottom of the jar. Unless, of course, somebody put cheese in at the bottom just for a joke. Perhaps I'd better go a little further, just in case heffalumps don't like cheese, the same as me." And he gave a deep sigh. "I was right. It is honey right the way down." Having made certain of this, he took the jar back to Piglet, and Piglet looked up from the bottom of his very deep pit and said, "Oh, got it?" And Boo said, "Yes, but it isn't quite a full jar." And he threw it down to Piglet. And Piglet said, "No, it isn't. Is that all you've got left?" And Boo said, "Yes," because it was. So Piglet put the jar at the bottom of the pit and climbed out, and they went off home together. "Well, good night, Pooh," said Piglet, when they got to Boo's house. "We'll meet at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning by the pine trees, and we can see how many heffalumps we've got in our trap." 6 o'clock, Piglet. And have we got any string?" "Oh, no. Why do you want some string?" "Oh, to lead them home with." "Oh, I think heffalumps come if you whistle." "Oh, some do, and some don't. You never can tell with heffalumps. Well, good night, Piglet." "Good night, Pooh." And off Piglet trotted to his house, Trespassers W, while Pooh made his preparations for bed. Some hours later, just as the night was beginning to steal away, Pooh Bear woke up suddenly with a sinking feeling. He had had that sinking feeling before, and he knew what it meant. He was hungry. And so he went to the larder, and he stood on a chair, and reached up to the top shelf, and found nothing. "That's funny," he thought. "I know I had a jar of honey there. A full jar, full of honey right up to the top. And it had honey written on it, so that I should know it was honey. That's very funny." And then he began to wander up and down, wondering where it was, murmuring a murmur to himself like this: "It was very funny, 'cause I know I had some honey, 'cause it had a label on saying honey. Ogalopatus Valabatu, and I don't know where it's got to. No, I don't know where it's gone. Well, it's funny." He had murmured this to himself 3 times in a singing sort of way, and then he suddenly remembered. He had put it into the cunning trap to catch the heffalump. "Oh, bother," said Boo. "It all comes of trying to be kind to heffalumps." And he got back into bed. But he couldn't sleep. The more he tried to sleep, the more he couldn't. He tried counting sheep, which is sometimes a good way of getting to sleep, and as that was no good, he tried counting heffalumps, and that was worse, because every heffalump that he counted was making straight for a pot of Pooh Bear's honey and eating it all. For some minutes he lay there miserably, but when the 587th heffalump was licking its jaws and saying to itself, "Very good honey, this. I don't know when I've tasted better," Pooh Bear could bear it no longer. He jumped out of bed, and he ran out of the house, and he ran straight to the 6 pine trees. The sun was still in bed, but there was a lightness in the sky over the 100-acre wood, seemed to show that it was waking up, and soon be kicking off the cloves. In the half-light, the pine trees looked cold and lonely, and the very deep pit seemed deeper than it was. And Boo's jar of honey on the bottom was something mysterious, a shape, and no more. But as he got nearer to it, his nose told him that it was indeed honey, and his tongue came out and began to polish up his mouth, ready for it. "Oh, bother," said Boo, as he got his nose inside the jar. "A heffalump has been eating it." And then he thought a little, and said, "Oh, no, I did. I forgot." Indeed, he had eaten most of it, but there was a little left at the very bottom of the jar, and he pushed his head right in and began to lick. By and by, Piglet woke up. As soon as he woke him up, he said to himself, "Oh," and then he said bravely, "Yes," and then said still more bravely, "Quite so." But he didn't feel very brave, for the word which was really jiggling about in his brain was heffalumps. What was a heffalump like? Was it fierce? Did it come when you whistled? How did it come? Was it fond of pigs at all? If it was fond of pigs, did it make any difference what sort of pig? Supposing it was fierce with pigs, would it make any difference if the pig had a grandfather called Trespassers William? He didn't know the answer to any of these questions, and he was going to see his first heffalump in about an hour from now. Of course, Pooh Bear would be with him, and it was much more friendlier with two. But suppose heffalumps were very fierce with pigs and bears. Wouldn't it be better to pretend that he had a headache and he couldn't get up to the 6 pine trees this morning? But then, suppose that it was a very fine day, and there was no heffalump in the trap. Here he would be, in bed all the morning, simply wasting his time for nothing. What should he do? And then he had a clever idea. He would go up very quietly to the 6 pine trees now, peep very cautiously into the trap, and see if there was a heffalump there. And if there was, he would go back to bed, and if there wasn't, he wouldn't. And so off he went. At first, he thought that there wouldn't be a heffalump in the trap, and then he thought that there would. And as he got nearer, he was sure that there would, because he could hear it heffalumping about like anything. "Oh dear, 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 dear," said Piglet to himself, and he wanted to run away. But somehow, having got so near, he felt that he must just see what a heffalump was like. And so he crept to the side of the trap and looked in. And all the time Winnie the Pooh been trying to get the honey jar off his head. The more he shook it, the more tightly it stuck. "Oh, bother," he said inside the jar, and "oh, help," and mostly "ow." And he tried bumping it against things, but as he couldn't see what he was bumping it against, it didn't help him. And he tried to climb out of the trap, but as he could see nothing but jar, and not much of that, he couldn't find his way. So at last he lifted up his head, jar and all, and made a loud roaring noise of sadness and despair. And it was at that moment that Piglet looked down. "Help! Help!" cried Piglet. "A heffalump! A horrible, horrible heffalump!" And he scampered off as hard as he could, still crying out, "Help! Help! A horrible heffalump! Of, a horrible heffalump! Oh, heffalump!" And he didn't stop crying and scampering until he got all the way to Christopher Robin's house. "What's the matter, Piglet?" said Christopher Robin, who was just getting up. "Heff," said Piglet, breathing so hard that he could hardly speak. "A heffalump." "Where?" Up there," said Piglet, waving his little paw. "What did it look like?" "Oh, like it had the biggest head you ever saw, Christopher Robin. A great, enormous thing, like nothing. A huge, big, well, oh, I don't know. Like an enormous, big, nothing. Like a jar." "Well," said Christopher Robin, putting on his shoes, I shall go and look at it. Come on. Piglet wasn't afraid if he had Christopher Robin with him, so off they went. I can hear it, can't you? Said Piglet anxiously as they got near. I can hear something, said Christopher Robin. It was Pooh, bumping his head against the tree root he had found. Oh, there, said Piglet. Isn't it awful? And he held on tight to Christopher Robin's hand. Suddenly, Christopher Robin began to laugh. And he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed. And while he was still laughing, crash went the Everlump's head against the tree root. Smash went the jar, and out came Winnie the Pooh's head. Then Piglet saw what a foolish little piglet he had been, and he was so ashamed of himself that he ran straight off home and went to bed with a headache. Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh went home to breakfast together. Oh, Bear, said Christopher Robin, how I do love you. So do I, said Pooh. And so ends Chapter 5 of Winnie the Pooh by A. A. Milne. Well, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. We'll be back to join Winnie the Pooh soon and find out why Eeyore had a very special day and gets 2 presents. That's to come in a future episode of the return of Your Story Corner, the podcast. In Season 2, we'll be doing more Winnie the Pooh, returning to the world of Sherlock Holmes, and some more of your favorites, including some surprises along the way. But I would love to hear from you about what you enjoy most about listening to the podcast. Depending on where you're listening to us right now, you can leave feedback and contact us right here. Just follow the link on the bottom of this episode. It should be showing up on Apple Podcast and also on Spotify. You can also contact us on our Instagram page. Drop us a follow and then get in touch. And again, of course, join us live on TikTok every other night from 10:30 p.m. UK time, where we'll be reading more Winnie the Pooh and some of your favorites. One question I can answer, we have had lots of requests for some Harry Potter. Now, I'd love to sit here and read Harry Potter for you, but it becomes no surprise to you that there are very strict commercial guidelines and copyright protection on doing recordings of Harry Potter. But, having said that, we may have found a way where we can explore the world of Harry Potter. So stick around and keep coming back. But thank you for your questions. We love listening and reading them all. Your feedback and this little corner is yours, why it is called Your Story Corner. So make sure you go back and listen to all of Season 1 and all the other episodes waiting for you if you need more stories to help you unwind tonight. Just go to yourstorycorner.com. But for now, it's time for bedtime. So snuggle in. I hope you are asleep very, very soon. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon for another episode of Your Story Corner, the podcast. Till next time, go well. Nanite.